Welcome back to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore, and today we're going to be talking about two games that I completed in the last 2 days. That's right. I've completed both Far Cry 6 and Guardians of the Galaxy within the last 48 hours. Now, it didn't take me 40 hours from start to finish of both of those games. I played those over the course of the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so. But I've been playing a lot of video games, and out of the two, the first one that I want to talk about is Far Cry 6, because Far Cry 6 is actually way less interesting out of those two games. So I just want to get it done and out of the way. Unfortunately, with Far Cry 6, you are getting exactly what you're looking for. You're getting the same exact formula that the Far Cry series is known for at this point. With the modern Far Cry games that I call them, you start with Far Cry 3, and you went into Blood Dragon, and then they did Far Cry 4, and then Primal, and then 5, and then New Dawn, and now we're at the 7th game in this modern series, which is Far Cry 6. It's just more of the same. And I kind of hate saying that because it's the phrase that everyone says whenever they talk about a numbered sequel to a video game franchise. They just say, oh, it's more of the same. And unfortunately, that is the case here. And it's really, really formulaic in exactly what the game wants you to do. It gives you this a protagonist, which now they've kind of changed. They've given him a name, but they've given him a voice dialogue and voice acted lines. You are playing as Danny Rojas, not the character from Ted Lasso, unfortunately, because he would be way more fun and entertaining than this crappy character that they've written. He is an orphan, and he stumbles into the role of second in command, basically doing all the dirty work for the leaders of the revolution. They're all contained within this island country called Yara, which is a stand-in for Cuba. So Danny basically, meets the leader of the revolution, and they tell him, oh, you need to help us because we need to free our people and blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all before. So he goes and does it. Sight unseen, just, all right, cool. You're telling me we need to free our people. I definitely see that there's corruption and unfairness and all this stuff. So he just goes and does whatever these leaders tell him to. On the other side of the spectrum of this game, you have the villain, which is Anton Castillo, who is voice acted and portrayed in-game character by Giancarlo Esposito, which is Gus Fring from Breaking Bad, which I think he does a fantastic job. I really do like his portrayal of this character, even though it's kind of, you just kind of see Gus Fring or you see Giancarlo as the character. You don't really see the evil Castillo. And I think that's part of the reason why I don't like that they got him in here. That's part of the reason, because you just see him, not his character. And unfortunately, he's not really in the game all that often. He is the main antagonist. He is the big bad. He is the character that everyone hates and is fighting against. And he definitely does have the most scenes, but they're really not that much. There's not a whole lot of him in that game. It took me roughly about 50 hours to complete this game. And in those 50 hours, I probably had maybe 20 minutes, maybe, of him at most. That's just not a whole lot for that game. 20 minutes of the main antagonist is not a lot. And he doesn't really show up. What I really liked about, I think it was Voss. I think they did it. It's been a long time since I played 3. But 4 as well. They talk to you. Same thing with the Seed family in Far Cry 5. These characters talk to you throughout the entire game, and Anton doesn't really do a whole lot of that. There's some back and forth in the cutscenes, but you're not going around and, doing all these missions and over the radio in game when you're driving down a street, him coming on the radio and antagonizing you and bossing you around and yelling at you and having conversations. it doesn't really work like that. And it's a real bummer because I think that's the more interesting part of when those villains show up, is them going off on their rants and raves about how they're building a better future for whatever country that they're in. And it's a real bummer that they use the same formula over all these years, over all these stretches of games, and it hasn't really changed all that much. You got a dictator character trying to force his way on the people of the country, and you play the protagonist that sees that there's some bad things going on and you try and stop it. And that's really all that there is to these games at this point. And it's a big bummer because I really do think that these games are fun, they're enjoyable, and they're really special, or they used to be. Now it's not as special as it used to be. And I just am really sad that we don't get that different type of game. Everyone talks about the Ubisoft formula, and I do agree there's definitely a formula going there, but it doesn't really bother me all that much. But here, it's a very, very formulaic, it is very predictable, and it's just a big bummer that they did not use video games as a mechanism for telling stories in the way it should be portrayed, or at least changing it up some. And when I was playing through this game, I did not enjoy myself as much as I thought I was going to. And I already reserved the fact that, yes, this is another Far Cry game. Yes, it's going to be very familiar, but it's been a couple years since I played that game. This game got delayed from last year. I can't imagine what that game was going to be a year ago. I don't know how much they've put into the game since then, because there's not a whole lot of new stuff in there. There's a lot of characters that are all goofy and way more characteristic of goofy, wacky characters that you've seen. And it's not funny, and it's not enjoyable, and it's not really that entertaining or refreshing. It's not new. And it's a real bummer that they've done that to that franchise. They've kind of just dug in to the ground of, this is what Far Cry is. Now we've got our formula. Let's just keep doing it over and over. Okay, all right. Who's our newest dictator? What country is it going to be set in? All right. We've got all the aspects of the vehicles and the wacky characters. All right. What buddy system can we create? What new wacky animal friend that we can tie to the player character to help him achieve the goals? Like, it's all the same at this point, and it is boring. I spent 50 freaking hours with this game, and I feel like I spent 700. It felt so boring going from place to place. So the story, like I said, it's very familiar and well-trodden path of all these characters fighting against the revolution and the revolution fighting against the main dictator. The ending is unbelievably bad, like unbelievably bad. So if you don't understand, or if you want a little break here, here's a big spoiler alert, because this game the ending is so bad. I cannot even believe it. So I'm going to just put a little break of music here so that I can talk about the ending of this game.
He despertado, encadenado. Oh, vela, chao, vela, chao, vela, chao, chao, chao. La tierra mía me la han robado y han incendiado mi país. Abran sus ojos, hay un tirano. Oh, vela, chao, vela, chao, vela, chao, chao, chao. Ese tirano desde su torre nuestras cadenas ha de ver.
ending of Far Cry 6 is this. Danny Rojas, defies all odds and is victorious in his, mission of fulfilling all these duties that he's supposed to do for the leader, Carla, something or other. I can't even remember the name, and I finished it like 2 nights ago. So at the very, or kind of near the end, you go to the Castillo's private residence, like this island that he's hiding out in. And him and his son. So this is the whole like quote unquote twist of this game is um, Giancarlo, the dictator, no, or El Presidente Castillo. Um, his son, he's grooming his son to become the next president. And so as you watch through the cutscenes in the game, his son is like learning how to become, his father, a dictator running the country and showing no mercy. And he's a lion and he has to take everything so that it's not stripped away from him so that he can provide a better life for his people and blah, 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 all that type of fun propaganda stuff. So he's at the villa and the leader of the revolution and the Castillos are sitting down at this table and they're having a discussion, and basically you kind of sneak your way in, force your way into this meeting. And Carla, the leader of the revolution, gets shot and dies. Castillo just kills her. A big, oh no, like that was never predictable. So you're all super pissed off. They flee, and now you are the leader of the revolution because you've been the only one doing everything possible for this revolution. You have been the second-hand man for everyone involved. And so Carla is dead. Now you take her place. You storm the gates of the main place, the biggest tower in all of the country, where the president or El Presidente is living, and you meet up with him in the boss's room, and you're prepared for this big old fight, and a cutscene happens, and you're like, all right, oh cool, I'll watch this cutscene. He'll yell at me and then try and kill me, and then I'll have this boss fight, I'll kill him, and be the new president. Very predictable, right? Well, it changes a little bit. So when you go into that cutscene, the cutscene basically happens like this. And again, spoilers. Castillo is dying because he's sick, he has leukemia, and so he's wanting his son to take over because he knows he has very little time left. Well, Danny, you, the player, have screwed that all up by, destroying all the properties and burning the city to the ground and all this stuff. And he's basically saying, look, I told you, you're ruining this country. I'm trying to save it. And now you have fulfilled your duty. You have come to take me, and I'm not going to let you. And unfortunately, this is what happens. He takes his son, he hugs his son, Diego, and shoots him dead. So he murders his son because he doesn't want his son to grow up as a prisoner of war and basically being a slave and all this stuff. So he kills his son. And then he slits his own throat the second after. And then he falls dead. And that's it. It happens in a cutscene. You have no big boss fight. They die. They build up Diego as this very sympathetic character. He's seeing what his dad is doing to the country and seeing all the lives he's really not helping. So, and he's getting a lot of prisoners like cursing at him and being angry with him. So he understands kind of a little bit of both sides, and he's starting to waver a little bit. And you're like, wow, this would be really interesting if, or when the story moves on, Castillo is dead. And then now Diego has this sympathetic heart for his country, seeing how his father is kind of split it into two feuding factions. So great, awesome. Unfortunately, he gets killed, and that's it. There's no follow-up. There's no cathartic moment of, relief. This kid who we've been watching like waver from completely like loyal to his dad and everything he's saying all the way up until the end of the game, where he's starting to question his father's methods by shooting a commander because he was torturing a character too much. Like, there's no payoff. There's no moment of respite or rest. It is just, there's that character, he's dead. It was basically worthless to care about. Same thing with Castillo. He just kills himself. There's no payoff. There's no rewarding moment of murdering him yourself and freeing Yara, the country, from the evil dictator's hand. No, it's just they died in a cutscene and there you go, and that's the end of the game. It just, it fell flat on its face. It was not rewarding or enjoyable to watch that cutscene, and it felt like a real wasted moment. Either and this is maybe my theory. I haven't really thought about this, but this is totally something that could have happened. Is when they, when the pandemic happened and all that, and they had to, delay the game. The game got delayed, and they wrote a quick ending to the game. I highly doubt it, but this could be what happened. Is that they just wrote this ending to kind of tie loose ends up to release this game that it was already supposed to be out earlier last year, a year ago. Then I don't know, and I don't understand. So that's Far Cry 6. I think I will say there are some good aspects to this game. The world itself is very large. There is a lot of collectibles that were pretty fun to get. I think the checkpoints that you see, you have like these enemy checkpoints, like in the foundations, just like in all the other Far Cry games where you take over the outposts. That's always really fun. That's always super enjoyable. And then with Far Cry 5, they had these prepper stashes, which were like little mini stories that you would gather with some intel, like a little note on the side of a building of a house out in the middle of the forest. And you go, okay, cool. This note says, hey, you stupid guys, you bad guys, I'm on to you. I've prepared a prepper stash, the shipping container that's built underground. You'll never get into it. Although, if whoever is reading this, if you are my brother, please go to the secret location that we both know, wink wink, and you can find me. And so you kind of have to work your way backwards through this puzzle to solve the puzzle to get into the prepper stash. And in that prepper stash is, weapons and ammo and health and collectibles and a little bit of extra story pieces through these little pages. They're almost like akin to the Riddler trophies in the Arkham series. Those Riddler trophies don't really do anything for the greater game, but it does make a attempt to add further depth to it. And that's what I really liked about those prepper stashes. There's a semi-equivalent to that called the Yarn stories, where you will come across these locations where you can, find different things. The two that always pop in my head when I wrote this in the review too is there's one where there is a mystery surrounding this underwater cave, and you go into the underwater cave and you find out that these two lovers, in the 1800s, were being chased by their father, their fathers and the army, and so they dove into this underwater cave, which is surrounded by jellyfish, and there's this, this legend. There's this tall tale of the witch of, or the ghost of the cave or whatever. And so you kind of walk through and kind of grapple and jump and go around this underwater cave area, and you pick up a lot of little diary notes and things like that to get more of the story. And you basically see that they were running away and they got trapped in there and they heard weird things and they got super sick off of spoiled food and died. And then you climb up a little bit further because you have modern climbing gear and you're not sick and being chased. And you see that there was some sort of pirate from, the 1400s who stashed her gold there, and it's a cursed place and all that type of stuff. Like, it is really, really cool. Same thing with another one where there's a pirate curse. There's this or this mountain that looks like a skull Mountain in the side of a coast. And before you got there, before, the civil war for this country has happened, it used to be a tourist spot. It used to be like a little mini theme park built around this story of two pirates who were married, and they cursed the curse of the, you know, pirate shotgun. And so there's a there's a pirate ship that is sunk in the middle of the uh, Skull Mountain area, and they built this like theme park attraction around it. And so you kind of go through, and it's kind of deteriorated and bombed out and all this stuff, and you go through and you see and read some stuff, and you read some little plaques, and it's just a really cool experience. I think the world building of those little stories is so much better than the main storyline. And that's what I don't get about some of these games. They put so much more effort into these little stories than the main overall game, and they're not connected at all. The main overall game should connect them in some way. And I wrote this in the review too. I think that these main storylines are way too broad and don't really connect very well to anything else outside that you're doing outside of the game for the majority of it. And also, I would love to see those main side missions be all connected to a larger story mission. And I can't remember how I wrote it, but I was saying something along the lines of all these little stories should be connected to the main overarching story. And I think that would be a way better way of tying all the stuff that you're doing throughout the 40, 50 plus hours of gameplay into the main story, as opposed to here's evil dictator, overthrow and have a revolution. Like, it's been done before 1,000 times and way better in more games. I really would love a Far Cry game that went off the beaten path at this point. Those prepper stashes, those Yaren stories are so much more entertaining. If it was a 10, 15-hour experience with a much smaller world that was basically like this type of game and this type of world, but just squished and not drawn out so much and not so predictable in most cases, because again, the ending is so like out of left field, but not in a good way. I would love to see a little bit more of that extra effort into the side missions, just like Witcher 3. Talk about Witcher 3, and what is the one mission that everyone brings up? It's the Bloody Baron. The Bloody Baron was a side mission. It's completely optional. I think. I could be wrong at this point. That came out in 2015, and I played through it like within the launch week. I did drop 160 hours into that game, all said and done, but I did, however, 100% it, and that's including the DLC as well. So, all that to say, Far Cry 6 is a disappointment of a game. I thought, sure, it's going to be more of the same, but it's so much more of the same that it was really disheartening to play through that entire game, spend $60 on it, and not really even enjoy it all that much. I spent that 50 hours in that game flying through the whole world and going down to these little encampments and clearing out outposts and checkpoints, and also coming in contact with all the different collectibles and just finding that stuff. I find that fascinating. I find that really fun and enjoyable and relaxing. That's the type of stuff that I really enjoy about these video games. Is it's very relaxing for me to just kind of turn my mind off, listen to a podcast, and just do these missions that don't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but it is still enjoyable. But when I went to the main mission parts, it was a way less enjoyable because I was not getting anything out of those stories. So with that, that's Far Cry 6. That's my opinions on Far Cry 6, and they really need to change up the formula because it's in 3D Zelda territory, where you had Ocarina of Time. It was a mind-blowing experience. And then you had Majora's Mask. That was basically the same game, but with new assets. And My opinions on that game are well noted. But then you had uh, Wind Waker, and then Twilight Princess, and then Skyward Sword, and it was all that same Zelda formula throughout all those games, and it kind of got really stale and boring. And someone was like, or we all collectively, as game players, said, "Enough is enough. You need to change it up. This is boring." Like, we played this type of formula, we know we need to get the hook shot, and then we go to the next dungeon, there's going to be an eye that will have a hook shot area, and that's what we need to do to progress to get the next weapon, and blah blah blah. So when Breath of the Wild came out, that's why that game is so awesome. Especially at the time, it was like, wow, this barely feels like a Zelda game. And that's a good thing, because these series and these franchises can be more than just what they are currently. Yes, you want to keep, the Zelda and Link and Ganondorf and all that fun stuff, but man, it is so enjoyable to have a breath of fresh air, have a change of pace for these types of games. So that's Far Cry 6. I'm going to stop it here, and then I will go into Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, Guardians of the Galaxy. Man, I cannot believe how wrong I was about this game. Well, yeah, wrong isn't the right way of saying it. I was not very enthusiastic about this game. When I saw it, I went, that looks interesting, but that was all it was. I saw a lot of negative feedback online about this game, and I was like, why? But at the same time, I kind of understand it, because it's a Marvel game, and wow, they dropped the ball with the Avengers game last year. ridden with microtransactions, live service game, barely any content, nickel and diming people out of the gate. Just it just seemed like a bad game, and I didn't play it, and I would like to play a little bit of it and see, because I heard the story is pretty fun. But I'm also sick of Marvel. I'm so sick of Marvel. I don't like the movies. And this is coming from someone who loves comics and have read m- a ton of comics. I've read more comics than most people have. I have a collection of graphic novels and comics. I would consider myself an avid comic reader and lover. But man, the Marvel movies and the DC movies and just modern pop culture comics are so terrible and so bad. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy the Marvel movies, but at the same time, I just think they are very, very, very surface level enjoyment. There is not a lot of depth to them. There is not a lot of emotion in them other than things that we've already read and seen before. So when Guardians of the Galaxy was coming out, and I was like, maybe I should play this. I read a lot of quick reviews. I didn't read through the reviews. I just kind of glanced at the scores and kind of seen what people's main opinions were. And it was kind of all over the place. It was a lot of, oh, this is really good, this is really bad, and it just totally depends on the person. So, me being that type of person where I don't like the Marvel movies, I was like, man, this seems like another Avengers. But I took the chance on it, and I was so impressed by how this game came out. It's about, it took me a little under 20 hours, over 19, under 20. So about 20 hours, let's just say. 20 hours to play through this game, and it's a very straightforward linear game. It is not a open world exploration type of game. It is hardcore Uncharted Mass Effect style game with no open worlds except for one open area that you can't really do a whole lot in other than play a couple mini games. And that's about it. And that's in one tiny aspect of the game. What you have here is a narrative, linear story, single player game focused on telling a great story. And they do that in spades. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are, I think, the best for sure of all those. And taking the Guardians, these D-list characters that no one's ever heard of before, and making them some of the best characters in all those movies and way more enjoyable than you think they would be. It's so nice to be able to see real proper care given to these characters and stories. Yeah, they touch on Thanos a little bit to kind of bring people in, because that's what, the general populace knows. They go, "Oh, the Marvel movies, Thanos is the bad guy." So if they don't reference him, a lot of people are going to be asking, "Where's Thanos? Where's Thanos? Where's Thanos?" And so, yeah, he's technically in there a little bit, and it's not a very large part, but man, them bringing in things like references to Fin Fang Foom and Lady Hellbender and just all these characters that you're like, wow, they're kind of pulling from. It's like when they talked about um, with Guardians Volume 2, the second movie, and they had Ego as the main villain. It was like, wait, what? Really? Okay, that's a really deep pull of Marvel lore in characters to give to this very popcorn culture type of movie experience. So I really liked this game. I loved it. I think it's definitely in the higher tier set list of top 10 games of this year for me. For sure. Because not only does it give the time to make these characters interesting, the dialogue supports it. Everything about this game feels like it was crafted for this game, with the developers loving these characters, enjoying what they're making, and making a good product. doing it well, caring about it, as opposed to something like the Avengers, where that's a cash grab. They're just pulling everything that they can, throwing it against the wall to make the lowest quality game with the highest earning percentage attached to it. That's not this game. Guardians is not that type of game. This is a piece of art created by a group of people who love the characters that are in this game. It is a set of characters that have already proven, popular, a popular IP, if you want to say it like that, and attach it to this group who wants to make something good and make a video game that's interesting, enjoyable, thought provoking at times, and just awesome. Some say the combat's not really very good. I liked it. I liked it a lot more than most game combat. You have to kind of think and kind of plan out your attacks, and having that Mass Effect style power wheel. It's not a power wheel, but you can kind of, as the action's going, add to your combat of, hey, you, Drax, go and knock this down or pick this up and throw it at someone. Okay, Gamora, use your blade here, or do this attack. And you can add to the combat of not just your blasters. And you also have elemental abilities to your blasters too. So there's a lot of stuff happening on screen. And then add to the fact of what I thought was going to be a big gimmick and I would never use, which is the huddle system. You go through these big combat encounters, and near the end, it kind of starts overwhelming you in certain cases. And as you defeat bad guys, you kind of build up this, stockpile of energy or whatever. I don't know how it actually works. It's a cooldown timer of some sort. And you have this huddle button that appears, and you basically huddle your team together with your music player, your, Walkman, and you have these characters in the middle of battle kind of calling a timeout really quick and saying, all right, what's going on? And your teammates are basically telling you what's happening in the battle. Are they winning? Are they losing? How are they feeling? How do they feel like the stack is against them? Or are they feeling very confident and maybe even cocky in some places? And you kind of see a couple of the words and phrases kind of be in the background of the screen. And you can use that moment to give a little bit of a pump up speech, a halftime locker room type of speech. And when you do that, your team will either latch onto it and be more energized, or they will be a little bit like, ugh, that was a pretty crappy speech, whatever. We're just going to continue doing what we're doing and hope for the best. And once that happens, once you choose what option to, or what speech to give, if they're pumped up or defeated more, then you get back into the fight, and then songs play. And it's a lot of 80s classics. The soundtrack is really good, but I personally hear those songs pretty much every day. So songs like I Ran by Flock of Seagulls, or you know the big go-to one is Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, stuff like that. I hear on a constant basis, and not because of memes, but because I enjoy 80s music and I love that style of music. So hearing that all the time is not really super special to me, but I could totally see, some kid playing this game and going, oh yeah, Flock of Seagulls, I like that song, or, whatever. But man, oh man, is it good. It is so enjoyable to have that music in the background at certain specific times. It doesn't wear out its welcome. It's not all the time and not in every battle, only in key specific areas where you can get that. And the combat doesn't even show up very often until later on in the very end of the game. Most of the beginning couple of hours of the game, there's like a couple fights. It's almost like the Tomb Raider series, the modern Tomb Raider series. I think it was in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. No, not Shadow. Shadow was third. Rise of the Tomb Raider, and maybe Shadow as well. One of those two. There's like little combat, like at all, in the first several hours of the game. Same thing here. There's very little combat. It's all story focused. And before I wrap up, I just want to say that holy crap, I want to see the script for this game because they don't shut up. The characters continue to talk throughout the entire game. And like I said, it's about 20 hours worth of gameplay. I'd say 5 minutes at most throughout that 20 hours is silence. Everyone's talking and having conversations throughout the entire game. And there is not a lot of space. There's not a lot of, walking around and just kind of doing your own thing. It's a very linear experience. It's hallways, where walk and talk and all that fun stuff. So I was thoroughly impressed by this game. I was so happy to play through this game. I could not put it down. Every moment I was, not playing, I was thinking about, oh man, I can't wait. And that doesn't happen a lot with a lot of modern games. There's very little time where I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to, finish dinner so I can go back and play this game and continue on with this story. Oh, I can't wait until everyone goes to sleep so I can, play some more stuff. Like, it was just so enjoyable in every aspect. The costumes, all the character designs, the character dialogue, the world building, all the extra characters that they show up in, like, and it's witty and funny too. I don't like the Marvel movies because I feel like everyone has a one-liner that they're just waiting. They just can't wait to say their one line and have it become a catchphrase. Like, they're just not even listening to the person that they're talking to. In their back in their minds, they're just going, okay, when can I say my catchphrase? When can I say my catchphrase? When can I say my catchphrase? I can say my catchphrase. I don't feel like that with this game. I don't feel like everyone's trying to get a catchphrase out at every possible moment. Yes, there are times where they do that. And yes, there are some voice deliveries that don't quite work, but that's going to happen with most stuff. I can point to games like Mass Effect that everyone loves, and I can go, there's definitely some cheesy lines in there, or lines that feel very forced and not natural. But here, it's very few and far between. So that is my experience for Guardians of the Galaxy. That's going to do it for this episode of the Game or Die podcast. It's going to be a little bit shorter this time because I was having some trouble with episode 50. So if I haven't gotten that out, or if you're having trouble listening to it, just wait on it. I'll fix it up. But this has been episode 51. I've been your host, Ryan Moore. Thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate it. And if you want to read my thoughts, more concise, more maybe orchestrated thought of these games and reviews of these games, you can go to the website gameordie.net. That is the website. And this has been the Game or Die podcast. Again, thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.